My guest this week has been described as one of the greatest English soccer strikers of all time. As a player, Gary Lineker scored 48 goals for England and nearly 250 for English clubs. Since leaving the pitch, he's become the face of football coverage here in the UK and is a big vocal presence on social media. When I sat down with him ahead of the World Cup, I wanted to ask him about concerns to do with Qatar's human rights record, the likes of David Beckham doing deals with the state, and why footballers can never win. Gary, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
Lovely to have you.
Thank you.
And it's an interesting time to talk to you because normally before a World Cup, there'd be a lot of the usual feelings, excitement, trepidation. Mm-hmm. This feels quite different because of the controversy around where it is.
Believe you me, this is the same before every World Cup. There are different levels of it, and this is high level, but you can go back. You go back to 1934 if you want, and the World Cup was in Italy and it was used as a vehicle to promote fascism for Mussolini. So this is not new. Brazil in 2014, there were riots on the streets by people in Brazil saying they shouldn't spend all this money on the stadiums, they should spend it on social care. We had Russia who invaded Crimea just a few years before they hosted the World Cup. So it's not something we're unaccustomed to.
Do you think it's on a different scale, though? Because some of the reports, of course, about the number of lives that have been lost in the building of the stadium and the preparations.
I think what makes this different is not just in terms of human rights and obviously workers' rights and what happened to them, and lots of lives were lost in the building of stadium. I think what is really different about this one is that we know when the bid was proved to be successful that it was corrupt. So I think that's what perhaps separates this from the rest. Human rights wise, well, there's a few countries that have hosted it that would fail some tests on that.
Yeah, well, let's go to that in a minute, but on the
course.
FIFA point, because the former FIFA president, Sepp Blatter, has now said it was a mistake.
He waited a long time to do that, hasn't he?
I mean, not in the clearest
I could have
terms.
told him that the minute he opened the thing that said Qatar on it.
Do you think there's any value in that statement at this point, or is it just pointless to hear it?
I just don't understand why he would do that now. I don't know whether that helps or hinders or what. I mean, he's the ex-president of FIFA at a time where there was a lot of dodgy goings on. So yes, it was a mistake, but it was more than a mistake, wasn't it, really?
Well, I mean, also FIFA just having put out this email, let's not focus on the politics, let's focus on the football. Do you think FIFA has learned as a body about what's the important focus?
I do believe that the current, maybe I'm being naive, but I do believe the current people in charge of FIFA, and it includes Arsene Wenger, is in a really high role. I have a certain amount of faith and trust that Arsene Wenger is a decent, upstanding, non-corrupt person. So I don't think the levels of corruption, if there are any, there will be in certain branches of FIFA because it's global. But in terms of the very top, I think it's much more transparent. The voting system is much more transparent and there's less corruption. Do they still make mistakes? Yes, they do, in terms of things that they said. And that the thing you just mentioned was very tone deaf to say that, because there's no question that this is kind of sports washing. But the reason sports washing works is when you are told to shut up about everything else and just say, we'll just stick to the football. So I think that was an error, and I think it was a tone-deaf statement, and I think it's something that most of the federations will probably argue against.
Some of the players we've heard might be wearing armbands in support of LGBTQ players and people around the world. Do you think we should hear more from the players themselves?
Well, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the minute players stand up and voice their concerns, everyone tells them, stay out of politics, stick to football.
Yeah.
When they don't stand up and say something, people say, why aren't you saying anything? So there's an element of the footballers that can't win on this. They're inextricably linked, politics and sport, all sport. There's no getting away from that fact. politicians will use football when it suits them. So if England start doing well and say get to the quarterfinals or semi-final, we'll all have our politicians standing up and they'll be putting England jerseys on and pretending to be really interested. Now, some of them are interested in football, a lot of them aren't. But even the ones that aren't will suddenly be wanting to be seen and jump on this England bandwagon of success. But the minute footballers voice themselves or come out and talk about social issues, take Marcus Rashford, for example, take the captains during COVID, all of a sudden it's like, well, hang on a minute, you're getting a bit above your station here. So footballers are allowed to speak when it suits the politicians, I always feel. It's always been a little bit of a kind of pet hate of mine.
Or, of course, though, the people they answer to are their fans as well. So, yes, the politicians make the statements and get the airtime in response, but I suppose it's just also, it's been striking how some of the female players have spoken out, female football players, about it. I was looking at the comments from England's Lotte Woburn-Moy, who said she's not going to watch it. Beth Mead, of course, is hugely successful striker. She's done so well in the game. She's just winning all these accolades. She's gay herself. She said, it's just so disappointing. But it's quite a big thing to say you're not going to watch it when you play football for a living.
Yeah, but I mean, people make their own decisions on what they have to do.
I just wondered, do you think they're being bolder because they're not involved?
Of course they are. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to say these things if you're not going to play in the world, you're not going to play in it. It's a different thing.
Do you think footballers get scared about speaking out? Or get nervous?
I think some will, some won't. Some are brave, some have stand up. I've been really proud of footballers over the last few years. I think they've really come out on social issues. I've mentioned Rashford before. The captains during the thing. We've seen people like Raheem Sterling speak out brilliantly on racism, things like that. So I've been really proud of the fact, and a lot of them do, and a lot of them will. Others are less comfortable, and it's for me it's a purely personal issue. I don't, if somebody wants to take a stand in a certain way, that's fine, and if somebody just wants to concentrate on their game and their own possibly their only opportunity to play in a World Cup, and they just want to get on with the football side of it and not let these things creep in, that's fine too.
You've talked a bit about, because just to say very clearly, it's homosexuality is illegal in Qatar. Yeah. There are also other issues that are very different culturally for the fans, which perhaps we'll come on to. But you've also talked about it would be a moment, not to put pressure, but it would be a bit of a moment if a footballer came out as gay during this tournament.
I did say that, but I didn't say a footballer should.
And which is why I was making that.
The context is important. So I was saying it would be a big kind of middle finger to perhaps that thing. And it won't happen. I wouldn't put pressure on any player ever to do that anyway. But of course it's an issue, the human rights side of things. It has to be.
A Qatar World Cup ambassador has just called homosexuality damage in the mind. I saw that. Which is an insight into the view, the reason for the view. Yeah. If you were gay as a fan, would you go to this tournament?
It's a great question. I don't know because it's a hypothetical question. You would have to give it a lot of thought, I think. I saw one of their main representatives, I think it was Al-Thani, speaking in an interview saying that gay people will be welcome and the question was asked, what about if they walk down the street holding hands? He said that will be absolutely fine. But let's see.
But there's a risk.
But there's a risk. But I understand why people, if the LGBTQ etc. would have reservations and thoughts and concerns. Absolutely. You could say whether I would go if I were gay. I honestly don't know. I don't know.
I mean, you are going to work to
I'm going to work, yeah.
How are you feeling about that with this?
Oh, no, I'm fine, but I don't have the slightest problem about going to work. I'm not going there to support the World Cup being in Qatar. I'm going there to report it.
To commentate.
For me, that's my job as a kind of sports broadcaster journalist.
Yeah.
As journalists will be sent to the war with Russia and Ukraine, but it doesn't mean to say they support what's going on.
No, and I didn't mean that, but I meant more like if there was any nervousness, just things like Qatar's UK ambassadors warned against public displays of affection. I'm not saying you're going to be doing any affection with your colleagues.
Chance would be a fine thing. Chance those
happily
days.
Single man, I understand. But also for the fans, I wonder if you've got a nervousness about that, not just on the human rights side, but the zero tolerance for drinking in public and being drunk.
I know. Well, I always have concerns about English fans travelling abroad because I'm afraid a small percentage of them do go there looking for trouble, looking to just get drunk, looking for a fight, and that's been part of something that it's been detestable around the England squad for years, and they ruin it for everyone else. What will happen to them in Qatar? I don't know if they go along that things, but I think we've all
well,
got.
I think all football fans, obviously, in their ranks have the drinking side of things.
Of course. Yeah, the drink. Well,
and
yes,
it's a nervousness perhaps around the whole thing as well.
I'm sure. I mean, I think we'll all be thinking ourselves, how do we get a drink at some point?
There might be that as well. Many footballers, as yourself, become pundits, ambassadors, journalists, commentators. There has also been criticism of, for instance, David Beckham becoming a paid ambassador for Qatar ahead of the World Cup. He's got to promote tourism and culture in Qatar. He's become a face of it. What do you make of that sort of decision?
Well, that's again, it's a personal decision. I'm not going to sit here and be judgmental. Would I do it? No.
Eric Cantona, who obviously played with him, has spoken out and urged him to think differently.
Yeah. And I understand why he's done that. And as I said, would I have done it? No. He's decided to go down that route. I would say about David, he's never really voiced his concerns about where the World Cup is, about it's not something he's ever got involved in. So can you accuse him? But he's not hypocritical. If I'd have done it, I was very, very anti the bid when it was first revealed in 2010. I was in the room. I couldn't believe it. It seemed to me that it must have been corrupt because they were talking about staging a summer World Cup in Qatar where temperatures are in the 40s, sometimes even approaching 50 degrees centigrade. It seemed unfathomable. So it did. Then obviously latterly it was moved to winter, and I was very vocal against it. So if I was going to do something like that, I'd feel hypocritical. I don't think you could accuse Beckham of that. You might accuse him of doing something that you might feel is fundamentally a wrong thing to do, and a lot of people will think that.
Are you disappointed by him doing that though? Because he's a role model for a lot of people.
He is a role model. As I said, I wouldn't do it.
I think also people think, why does he need 10 million quid? Does he really need to do that? That's the other question.
I have no idea how much he's getting paid, but I suspect he would survive without it.
So I suppose it's that, the feeling of influence and how people have influence and what they use it for.
Of course, footballers are, they're become, obviously, sport's a massive thing in the whole world anyway, and football particularly, and just before a World Cup it is, and there's a lot of expectancy on footballers, but there's a lot of criticism about how much they earn and stuff like that, and footballers do get it in the neck. It's like it's tough to win. Obviously they have a wonderfully lucrative life, but it's funny, I always think they don't really get the criticism in other people in other sports even, like you go earn lots of money like golf or Formula One, or you could even go in other routes like actors. Huge actors earn fortunes. Musicians, brilliant musicians, they earn. If you're in the entertainment industry, you do get paid a lot of money, but no one else gets that. Football, it's almost as though these are working class lads. It's a little bit different.
Is that what you think is going on?
I genuinely believe it might be subconsciously, but I think there's an element of that. They're a bit above their station.
Is it also because they can and do, especially because they're so young, earning so much money, get into a lot of trouble at times, like the drunkenness?
Not many of them do. Not many of them do.
So yeah, is that?
And the other thing as well, it's absolutely a perception thing. Footballers are a cross section of working class society. Really, they come up and it's hard. They have to work really hard. They live very well. Every now and again, a footballer will misbehave. One out of there's thousands of them around, but that becomes a huge story. All the incredible good that they do for the local communities, visiting kids in hospital, doing loads of good things, raising awareness of whether it be racism or during the COVID pandemic, that doesn't become the big story. But one player goes out on a drunken night out and gets pictured with a girl or something, then that becomes like a front page story. Yeah. And it's a little bit unfair, and that doesn't really happen as much in other areas.
So it's a disproportionate
I think it's disproportionate, yeah.
I mean, of course, when actors, behave badly or things, it also gets captured. But it's interesting to hear you think it is disproportionate. I mean, we should also say there have been some really high-profile cases and allegations made against top-class footballers in relation to behaviour with women.
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, it seems a change in the culture when you were playing around the game. I don't know if that's fair and what you think around that.
I don't know. I still think, even when I played, I doubt it's that much different now. You'd have.
There's a lot more money, I suppose, and
well, there is a lot.
People not settling
there
down.
There is a lot more
as young
money,
as well.
and there'd be a lot more, dangers and outside interests. I honestly think that mostly, though, like the massive majority of footballers be really good lads, well behaved, work really, really hard on what they do and live properly, because you have to now, because it's so competitive. And I think it was exactly the same in my day. You will still get the odd drunk, the odd sexist, the odd homophobic person, the odd, like a cross-section of
Yes.
working class society, and the odd person that will commit a crime. But it's not rife, it's like it's very occasional, limited. I'm not trying to defend the actions of the few.
You're trying to put it in
I'm trying
context.
to get a context and perspective of the overall picture of footballers.
I suppose, though, the other thing that's undeniable is we still don't have an openly gay male footballer in the Premier League.
No.
What could change, or how could that change, do you think, to make that a space where it feels comfortable?
I don't know. I mean, it's again, it's. I mean, it's distressing, and we've seen it, starting to see it in other sports, aren't we? Tom Daley we've seen, and
in the women's game,
in the women's game as well. And I just would love it if we had an environment where they just felt they should. It seems absurd that anyone should be scared of saying who you are, but it's just I think it's a society thing as well. I mean, I kind of probably naively said something in an interview recently that got picked up by quite a lot, few like, smart gay people, which I've kind of learnt from. I was saying I honestly think that if a footballer came out, it would be hugely positive, and others would follow. And they, I was kind of told, don't just, you've no idea how difficult this situation is. So, I mean, it's delicate, and it's true. It's kind of baffling, because it's obvious there must be lots of Premier League footballers and footballers around the country that are gay and having to live not their true and not be their true selves, and I think that's really sad.
Did you, like, looking back on your career, do you think you played alongside men who weren't their true selves in that way?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure. I don't know for a fact, but I think so.
And do you have young footballers who come to you to say they'd love to be
I've had a couple, both anonymous actually. One was very close to coming out. He was actually the secret gay footballer, and I was talking to him on direct message quite a lot, and I was going to be doing the interview when, but then he got cold feet at the last second, and I said, well, I totally respect that, I totally understand. And then I was reached out through my agency, another anonymous footballer that was thinking about it. So I don't know who they are, but they're out there. Of course they're out there.
Yeah.
And I can understand how incredibly difficult it must be for them.
Do you think it's the fans mainly?
I don't know. It's probably everything. They're kind of coming out. Who knows? They might not have told their family. They might be scared about that. They might be scared about telling their teammates in the dressing room.
Yeah.
It must be quite incredibly difficult, tough.
On your coming out with your political views, a different type of coming out, and saying more what you think about things, it actually did take you a long time, didn't it?
It took social media.
Is that what it was?
I mean, I've always had but I had nowhere to share them.
And I think, when you speak out like that, there are people who don't like the reactions and have ended up then self-censoring. Do you ever have that fear, that anxiety after you've sent a post? Or
I have a policy with I've got 3 rules in Twitter. One is not to tweet when I'm had a few drinks, which I stick to. The other is not to tweet if I'm angry, but I don't really get angry. So, when I'm too frustrated. And my other one is that whenever I do any kind of tweet, I'll read it back. And then if I have 1% doubt, I won't send it.
It's gone.
Although that one, occasionally, when I think of something that I think, actually, that's quite funny, I'll take a chance. But generally, those are my 3 rules.
Would you pay for your authentication?
I wouldn't have paid
your
44 billion for Twitter.
No, well, slightly separate
Would
deal.
I pay? Well, I never asked for it in the first place. So.
No, but the whole idea of how they're going to change a model, pay,
yeah,
and have...
I don't know yet. I'm going to weigh it up. I'm not going to make any rash decision now. And
Okay.
I mean, it's not. But the truth is, actually, a lot of people are on Twitter to follow people that they find interesting, whether they're mostly blue tick people, whether they're like a politician or actor or a sports person or a musician or real comedians, and you follow them, and they're the blue tick ones. So actually, I think it's the blue tick people that entice more people onto the platform. So Elon Musk, I think, should be paying us $8 a month. Everyone on there, rather than the other way round.
Well, you can tweet him direct because he replies, it seems, to absolutely
Does
anyone.
He? Oh, right.
And especially if you've got a blue tick.
I doubt he'd agree with me, though.
I dare you to tweet it. You mentioned, of course, the reaction to footballers, former footballers like yourself, from politicians at times. And you brought up the pandemic as well. And here in the UK, the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, when asked about footballers' wages during the lockdown, during the pandemic, said, quote, "Everybody needs to play their part in this national effort, and that means Premier League footballers too." He talked about taking pay cuts. You'll remember all of this. He's now in Australia taking part in a reality TV show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Been suspended as a Conservative MP. Do you think he's playing his part as an MP?
I think he should have stuck to telling footballers to stick to football.
Yes.
I mean, I did do what he wants, but he's still an acting politician, so it seems a bit strange to me to disappear into the jungle. But I think maybe, did you see that thing when Rishi Sunak was welcomed and he shook everyone's hand and he kind of ignored Hancock in the middle?
Yes.
And maybe that made him go, that was it, I'm going to the bloody jungle.
It might also be the 400 grand that he's been
That
might
be one of the 400,000 reasons for him going.
We don't know.
I don't know if he's getting that, but they do pay well, apparently.
Apparently so. But I suppose it was what you were talking about earlier about who stays in which lane and who polices who.
Well, of course. And with politicians, I always find it depends. They'll do it when it suits them.
Yes.
So.
Well, and then of course there are those who feel very passionately that our politicians shouldn't be celebrities and shouldn't be reaching for that because they're public servants and then there's very serious points about him going in, I suppose, from those who were bereaved during the pandemic and feel...
Indeed. I can understand people's reservations about it. It's almost a kind of bit of comedy in a way, isn't it? But there are obviously more serious issues that he was a large part of the early days with, so many deaths in COVID and some would throw the blame at the government in terms of the lack of protection, certainly in care homes and things like that. So, I don't know.
Well,
it's not. I don't know whether I'll even watch it.
So you've not been tempted to do any of those particular shows yourself?
Good Lord, no. If you ever see me in one of those, you'll know things have gone horribly wrong.
We know it's really bad. That's your equivalent of taking some of these other deals, perhaps.
I think so. I'd be even worse. I don't know. It'd be my worst nightmare.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Pleasure.
And thank you so much for being with us. Until we meet again, take care and goodbye.